On the first night aboard the cruise ship, I was in the bar, listening to jazz and sipping on a cocktail. Not far away, handsome men and beautiful women in elegant dresses were dancing. Everyone was immersed in the joyful atmosphere. Welcome, passengers, to the Freedom Cruise, the announcement began. Currently, the Freedom Cruise is anchored in international waters. We invite you to participate in the Freedom Cruise Death Game. There are 50 gentlemen and 50 ladies on board. The ship will only proceed to its destination when there is one survivor left. Enjoy the game. Still tipsy, I hadn't fully grasped the situation and thought it was someone's prank. But then, the sound of the engine stopped. The tourists gradually sobered up. I immediately ran to the corridor. The ship had really stopped moving. Why isn't it moving? That death game can't be real, right? No way. I've watched too many movies, I thought. I called over a robot waiter. Was that broadcast about the death game real? Yes, it replied. We suggest you return to your cabin and protect yourself. The crowd was starting to panic, but everyone was still trying to stay rational. I pushed through them, wanting to see the cockpit for myself. I wanted to ask the captain why the ship had stopped, but when I got to the cockpit, I was stunned. There was no captain. This was a ghost ship with no one at the helm. A sudden wave of fear almost made me collapse, but I still held on to a sliver of hope. I asked the nearest robot waiter, "Is there really no one driving this ship?" "Ma'am, the Freedom Cruise is fully automated. All staff are robots." I started trembling all over. So this is a massacre, I thought. My heart pounded with fear, and my breathing became rapid. "Ma'am," a sudden unfamiliar man's voice startled me, causing me to step back. This man, like me, had come to the cockpit. I immediately took a defensive position behind a table. "Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you," he said apologetically. "I just wanted to check out the cockpit. It's unmanned," I said, still watching him warily from a distance. He paused for a moment, then opened the glass door and entered the control room. Strangely, the control room door could be opened so easily. He turned back to me, brimming with confidence. "Don't worry," he said. "I used to be a captain. I can get this thing running by adjusting a few parameters." He seemed like a savior to me, and I hoped he could fix the situation quickly. He started fiddling with the buttons and controls. Suddenly, a gunshot rang out. I screamed, my legs giving way as I collapsed to the floor. My face was splattered with blood, his blood. The man had been shot. He lay in a pool of blood, a gaping hole in his head, with blood still pouring out. The gruesome sight almost made me faint. How is there a gun here? I thought, horrified. I cautiously approached the control room and glanced around. On the ceiling, I noticed a small gun barrel. Can't someone take control of the cruise ship? I thought desperately. Then I noticed a small electronic screen on the wall displaying the number 99. I suddenly remembered seeing similar screens all over the ship, but the number had been 100 earlier. Could it be? Is this screen showing the number of people left on the ship? I wondered, my heart racing. This really is a death game. I gasped, feeling my limbs go stiff with fear. A humanoid robot with a friendly yet cold expression looked at me and said, "Welcome to the death game. Remaining participants, 99. Food, food, food," I kept chanting in my mind. I quickly chose a secluded path and ran towards the dining area. The Freedom Cruise had 3 restaurants: an Eastern restaurant, a Western restaurant, and a fast food joint. In the Eastern and Western restaurants, you had to order from the waiter and wait for your food. Only the fast food joint allowed you to choose your meal and get it immediately. When I reached the fast food joint, I was stunned. People inside had already started fighting over the food and were crowding the serving area. I could clearly see that some people at the front, crushed by the crowd, were no longer moving. Their faces were pale, they were dead. A few others were being trampled underfoot by the frantic crowd. Screams, curses, and cries filled the air. It was a gathering of demons. I quickly took a side path to leave. The robot was right. The cabin was the safest place. The screen now showed 91 remaining participants. I rushed back to my cabin, immediately locking the door and pushing a table against it for extra security. I checked all the items I could use for survival. An umbrella could be used for self-defense. A data cable could strangle an enemy if necessary. A curling iron could burn someone, and luckily I had the wireless charging model. Spare clothes could be used to bandage wounds. The bread my friend had insisted I take before the trip could sustain me for a day or two. I packed everything useful into my backpack and then sat on the bed, letting out a long sigh. I had no idea how long I could survive. In the deathly silence, a chilling voice suddenly echoed through the room. "Diana, is there anything I can assist you with?" I jumped in fright and turned towards the source of the voice. It was a small robot dog. I crouched down, ready to smash it in a fit of fear and anger, but it suddenly folded into a cube like a transformer. The screen on its face turned into a crying emoji. It could actually detect danger and protect itself. "Sorry, ma'am. My name is Smelly. Please don't hit Smelly," it said. I was momentarily charmed by its cuteness and even patted its head, which was actually one side of the cube. "Smelly, tell me what to do now," I asked. Smelly unfolded back into a robot dog. "Diana, if you need anything during the game, just call me. I need a structural map of this ship, including the internal pipelines," I said. In no time, a structural map was printed out. Unbelievable. If I used Smelly wisely, my chances of survival would be much higher. A broadcast came on, and this time it was a man's voice. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is the captain of the Freedom Cruise. I apologize for the unnecessary trouble caused by a machine malfunction earlier. Shortly, our staff will personally deliver dinner to your rooms. Please remain in your cabins and do not panic. The Freedom Cruise will set sail again in 2 hours." Captain? But I've already confirmed that this ship doesn't have a captain. How can this be? I thought, puzzled. "Smelly, who is the captain of the Freedom Cruise? Tell me quickly." "If judged by human standards, the captain of the Freedom Cruise is not a human," Smelly replied. "So who is it? Who was that man on the broadcast? Why is he lying?" I asked, my mind racing. "Smelly, do you think the person on the broadcast might use the dinner delivery as a pretext to start killing people?" "That possibility cannot be ruled out," Smelly responded. "Hiding here is too passive. I need to find out what this person is planning," I decided. The screen now showed 90 remaining participants. I had already memorized the ship's structural map. Memory had always been my strong suit. From the bathroom's ventilation duct, I could access the pipes and move to any room. Just as I was about to grab a stool to climb up to the vent, Smelly's 4 legs suddenly extended, allowing me to sit on its back. It carried me and helped me into the duct. "If anyone asks where I went, you know what to say, right?" I asked. "Diana couldn't handle the reality and jumped overboard," Smelly replied. I patted its head. "Good thing I have you," I thought, feeling a bit more secure. The duct was pitch black. I turned on the flashlight I had brought from my cabin and started crawling forward. I could faintly hear sounds coming from different cabins. Many people seemed to believe the captain's story and weren't taking the current situation seriously. At the end of the duct, I climbed a ladder to the second-floor duct. This was where the men's cabins were. It was strange that the cabins were segregated by gender. The robot had told me it was to provide gender-specific services. Compared to the first floor, the second floor was much quieter. Then, I heard the voice of the man from the broadcast. "This ship doesn't allow us to change course. We're forced to join this game. But I hope you men can compete in a fairer way." I moved closer to the vent. Through the bathroom exhaust fan, I could vaguely see the man. He was very muscular, with an eagle tattoo on the back of his neck, and he was holding a steel pipe. The room was filled with almost all the men on the ship. Clearly, the eagle-tattooed man had taken a leadership position. "Our strength gives us an advantage over the women, so we need to use it," the eagle-tattooed man said passionately. "Are you suggesting we kill those 50 women?" a red-haired man asked from the crowd. The men murmured among themselves. "If we want to survive, we need to deal with the weakest group first," the eagle-tattooed man declared. I felt a chill run down my spine. This was turning into a nightmare. "Do you have a conscience? How is this fair?" the red-haired man shouted angrily. "Is there any fairness here? The strong preying on the weak is the only fairness in this situation. Who among us doesn't want to survive? Instead of having 100 people fighting, wouldn't it be better to cut the number in half first? That way, each of us has a better chance of surviving." The eagle-tattooed man responded fiercely. He calmed down a bit and added, "Of course, we'll decide this by anonymous vote. Is that fair enough?" The men fell silent. Each of them wrote their choice on a piece of paper and placed it in a box. The person counting the votes began tallying them, marking the results on the white wall. The top row was for those who chose to take action, and the bottom row was for those who chose to abstain. I watched nervously from the vent as the vote counter tallied the votes, feeling like I was facing a judgment. The marks for taking action gradually outnumbered those for abstaining. My heart sank bit by bit. I couldn't believe that this death game was turning into a one-sided massacre of women simply because the men had stronger physiques. As the number of votes for action continued to rise, I couldn't wait any longer. I had to warn the women to hide and protect themselves. Just as I was about to leave, the hook in the vent snagged my necklace, snapping it. My necklace fell to the bathroom floor with a crisp clink. The men in the room all turned to look at the bathroom. "There's someone in there," a man's voice said. My mind went blank as I locked eyes with one of the men. "Run," I thought. I scrambled forward, not caring about the noise I was making. I heard someone behind me opening the vent cover. "Run, run," I kept telling myself. I turned off my flashlight to avoid giving away my appearance. After all, this duct led straight to a ladder that went down to the first floor. Finally, I reached the ladder, but I was so nervous that my hands slipped and I fell straight down to the first floor. I felt like my back was going to break and my arm was scraped and bleeding. I had to endure the excruciating pain and keep climbing the ladder. I finally made it to the first floor and safely back to my room. "Smelly, you need to get out and tell all the women on this floor to block their doors, windows, and vents. The men on the second floor are targeting all the women," I said, my voice trembling and tears welling up. "Master, you're hurt," Smelly said. "Don't worry about me, just go," I screamed hysterically, moving the table that was blocking the door. Smelly left and I blocked the door again, my whole body shaking uncontrollably. What should I do? I had no strength left. Outside, I heard Smelly's warning voice. "Ladies, please protect yourselves. Don't open the door. Block your doors, windows, and vents. The men are about to attack you." At the same time, I heard the sounds of doors being violently forced open and screams. "Help! Please, let me go." A woman's scream cut through me like a knife. It was too late. There were 87 people left. The duct was my only path to survival. I had to escape before they took over the duct. In the structural diagram, I saw an extremely narrow duct that would be difficult for a man to pass through. This narrow duct wasn't marked on the map, and I had no idea which room it connected to. Maybe it was the perfect hiding spot. I carefully crawled with my backpack, only turning on my flashlight when I needed to see the way, to avoid exposing myself. Slowly, I crawled for about 10 minutes and reached the third floor. Suddenly, I heard a man's voice behind me. "Hello there, pretty." I felt frozen. I turned on my flashlight and looked back. A man with an eagle tattoo was grinning at me menacingly, his eyes glowing red. I immediately started crawling frantically, my mind blank. My hands and feet went numb, moving forward unconsciously. I couldn't stop. Stopping meant becoming the devil's prey. Cold sweat covered my body as his sinister laughter grew closer and closer. A large hand grabbed my ankle. I screamed and kicked his head with all my strength, but his grip was so strong, his nails dug deep into my skin, causing excruciating pain. I turned around and pressed my hot curling iron against his hand. He howled in pain and finally let go. Taking advantage of his pain, I crawled forward like my life depended on it. My head was spinning, and the sweat on my palms made it hard to hold onto my curling iron. "Run, run," I kept telling myself. I could barely make out my destination ahead, the narrow duct. With all my strength, I squeezed myself into the downward duct. It was so tight I could hardly breathe, but thankfully, it did lead to a room below. The eagle-tattooed man was getting closer. I had to jump into the room below before he reached me. But I was almost stuck in the duct, my feet still a meter away from the vent. I took a deep breath, pressed my hands against the walls, and pushed myself down with all my might. Thud, thud, thud. His footsteps were getting closer, just a little more. Finally, my feet reached the vent. I kicked it open and continued to squeeze myself down. Suddenly, 2 hands grabbed my ankles and pulled me out of the duct. The person pulling me down was a girl. After I fell to the floor, she quickly sealed the vent with a metal sheet. I thanked her, despite the pain that felt like my body was falling apart. But as I turned around, I was struck on the head and lost consciousness completely. There were 47 people left. When I woke up, I found myself tightly bound. My head throbbed with pain, as if it was about to explode. I was still in the room I had fallen into, which turned out to be a greenhouse. A humidifier sprayed mist, nourishing the white roses that filled the room. The roses smelled sweet, but in my current situation, they felt like a mockery from the Grim Reaper. A girl in a black trench coat walked over and scrutinized me. She had a sleek, high ponytail and wore a wooden bracelet. The veins on her arms were very pronounced. "Why did you tie me up? What happened to the other girls?" I struggled against the ropes binding me. She suddenly grabbed my throat with one hand, cutting off my air. "How do you know their plan? Are you with them?" "No, I overheard it," I gasped, feeling the blood rush to my head, but unable to move. "I told my robot to warn the others. So what happened to them?" "That dumb robot dog is yours?" Her gaze softened a bit. "Yes, and he's not dumb. His name is Smelly. Most of them are dead. A few were captured," she said nonchalantly, rummaging through my backpack. "You mean most of the girls are dead?" I asked, horrified. "Your dumb dog barked 3 times and then stopped. Not many heard the warning. And even if they did, where could they run in such a short time?" A wave of sadness washed over me. I knew this was a death game, and people would die, but I was still shaken by how quickly the men had united, deceived the weaker ones with misinformation, and launched their attack. Their violence was terrifying, yet seemed so natural. The thought made my skin crawl. "You should worry about yourself," the girl said coldly, taking the bread from my backpack and putting it in her own. Then she untied me and kicked me out of the greenhouse. Her final words were, "If I see you again, you won't be so lucky." Without any weapons, I was thrown into the hallway. If anyone passed by, I would be in danger. The surroundings were eerily quiet. I carefully hugged the wall, crouching as I moved forward. I needed to get back to my room and find Smelly. Ahead, I saw a man's corpse with a wine glass stem stabbed into his abdomen. Overcoming my immense fear, I pulled the bloody stem from his stomach and held it as a weapon. Finally, I made it to the first floor. The sight before me almost made me faint. The hallway was lined with women's bodies. I stepped over them, trembling all over. If I hadn't overheard their plan, I might have been one of them. I finally reached my room. Smelly was silently wagging his tail at me. I felt a sense of trust in him. Knowing my room was empty, I immediately barricaded the door and sealed the vent. What should I do now? How could I survive this? Smelly brought me my laptop from my suitcase. "Master, you were all chosen." "Chosen? What do you mean?" "Many people signed up for this trip, but the captain selected 50 men and women, believing each had their own survival skills." "What survival skills do I have? It's a joke. I can't even win an arm wrestling match." "But you're a programmer." "Programming is my job. How can that help me here?" "If this is a fully AI-controlled cruise ship, I can control the entire ship. But how do I access the ship's system?" Smelly pulled out a small USB drive from his rear. "That's quite unique." I immediately plugged the USB into my laptop and accessed the ship's back-end system. I couldn't let this damned game continue. I had to stop it and make the ship return. However, breaking into the system wasn't easy. It was heavily encrypted, but I found a vulnerability and hacked in. I changed the destination to Zhuhai Port and confidently hit enter. The system crashed. Error. I tried several more times, but each attempt ended in failure. "Damn it," I cursed. "So we're doomed to be trapped in this game until only one person is left?" Since I couldn't stop the game, I had to use it as a means of survival. Through the cameras, I could see what was happening in every room. The dining room, bar, and cafe were in chaos. The swimming pool water had turned red, with bodies floating on the surface. Some survivors hid in their rooms, while others formed groups to hunt down stragglers. Suddenly, I noticed 3 surviving girls in one room. When I zoomed in, the scene almost suffocated me. One girl was being sexually assaulted by a man, while the other 2 stared blankly. Then the eagle-tattooed man entered, threw another girl onto the bed, and began assaulting her. My hands trembled as I shut the laptop screen. I couldn't help but vomit, spewing out a sour liquid. How could this be happening? The slaughter was already brutal enough. Why? Why did they have to treat them like this in their final moments? My emotions spiraled out of control, and tears streamed down my face. I felt their pain. I tried to calm myself with deep breaths. Master, you didn't come here to save others. Smelly's voice pulled me out of my emotional whirlpool. Right? I'm not here to save others. I need to save myself. I reopened the laptop, trying to find a hiding place through the cameras. I saw the eagle-tattooed man beating the girl on the bed with his fists. Blood splattered on the white sheets. The other two girls cried and tried to pull him away, but another man held them back. I realized there was a fourth girl in the room, half out of the camera's view, lying on the floor. I couldn't control my emotions any longer and cried silently. He could have killed them, but he chose to humiliate them in the most brutal way. At that moment, I knew what I had to do. I wouldn't let the other two girls be humiliated like that. I had to save them. There were 45 people left. First, I needed enough weapons. Through the cameras, I chose a path to the bar that was completely empty. Smelly scouted ahead, ensuring no one was around. We safely reached the bar. Smelly kept watch at the door while I searched the cabinets for anything useful, like a bottle opener. If there was nothing, I would have to break the glasses and use them as weapons. Sir, do you need any help? Smelly's voice alerted me. Someone was coming. I quickly hid in one of the cabinets, closing the door and curling up inside. The unfamiliar footsteps got closer and closer. I covered my mouth, not daring to breathe. My heart pounded in my throat. The footsteps stopped near me. I didn't move a muscle in the darkness. Cold sweat trickled down my forehead, itching, but I didn't dare scratch it. Time seemed to stand still. Suddenly, the cabinet door in front of me opened and light flooded in. A man's face stared at me, his eyes bloodshot. I looked at him in terror, trembling uncontrollably. Was he going to kill me? The cabinet door closed. His footsteps grew distant until they disappeared completely. He had found me but let me go. It felt like a miracle. Maybe some people still had a shred of goodness in them, like the girl in black and this man. I hurriedly grabbed a few glasses and left the bar. We found a hidden room through the cameras and broke all the glasses, wrapping the handles in cloth to make small knives. With these weapons, I could better help the trapped girls escape, but their room was completely surrounded by the eagle-tattooed man's gang. Going directly would be suicide. The ducks were also heavily guarded. So I came up with a diversion plan. There were 40 people left. I opened my laptop and started modifying the fast food restaurant's program. The codes scrolled before me, and I felt the joy of controlling the machines. Soon, the restaurant's serving area began dispensing meal after meal. Since the restaurant only allowed one serving per person, survivors, including the eagle-tattooed man's gang, wouldn't risk their lives for food. But if there was a pile of food, his gang would definitely go for it. Sure enough, someone took the bait. A man grabbed a bunch of food, eating and stuffing it into his bag. Unfortunately, a sharp steel rod pierced his throat, killing him instantly, food still in his mouth. 2 other men killed him and started hoarding the food. I checked another camera. Perfect. The eagle-tattooed man and his gang were heading to the restaurant. Now was the time. Smelly and I quietly took a hidden path and finally reached the room where the 2 girls were. I had already unlocked the door with my program. We could just push it open. Inside, one girl sat on the bed, crying over her friend's body. The other stared blankly out the window. They shrank back in fear when they saw me. It's okay. I'm here to save you, I reassured them, calming their nerves. I took the makeshift knives from my backpack and handed them each 2. I checked the cameras again. Everyone was still fighting over the food. Just as we were about to leave, the last face I wanted to see appeared. The eagle-tattooed man opened the door, a cigar in his mouth, looking at us mockingly as if we were children playing a game. He exhaled a puff of smoke. Trying to run? He asked, walking towards me. His rough hand rested on my shoulder, slowly sliding down my back. Looks like you want to join them, huh? I just came to get some food, I lied. Sure, I'm always kind to women, he said, making me scoff internally. As he turned his back to me, I quickly drew the knife hidden in my sleeve and aimed for his back. But he seemed to anticipate my move, turning around faster than I could react and knocking the knife out of my hand, then punching me to the ground. I signaled to the 2 girls behind him with my eyes. They understood immediately. I covered my head with my hands, enduring his punches and kicks, buying them time. One of the girls seized the moment, holding the knife with both hands and stabbing at him from behind. She didn't hit a vital spot, but she managed to wound his waist, blood soaking through his white shirt. Enraged, he began to beat the girl who had stabbed him. Despite the pain, I gritted my teeth and stood up, locking my arms around his neck from behind. I used all my strength to choke him while he tried to pry my arms off. I wrapped my legs around him, holding on tightly. The other girl picked up the knife from the floor and aimed for his heart, but he managed to free himself from my grip, grabbed the knife, and stabbed her in the abdomen. She collapsed, blood pouring from her mouth. In that instant, a fire ignited within me. My head felt hot with rage. I grabbed Smelly and with all my might smashed him against the back of the eagle-tattooed man's head. He fell, hitting his head on the bed corner, blood flowing from his skull. His eyes remained open, filled with hatred. The girl who had been trembling in fear suddenly picked up the knife I had given her and stabbed him in the heart. I panted, staring at the lifeless body of the eagle-tattooed man. My hands shook as I held Smelly, unable to believe I had just killed someone. The door to the room suddenly opened. A man entered, looking at the eagle-tattooed man's body with a strange smile. He walked in gracefully. "Help me move this bastard out," he said, showing no aggression towards us, which made me lower my guard. But as I approached the body, he tackled me to the ground and injected something into my neck. I felt the liquid enter my body, and my consciousness began to fade. I lay on the floor, unable to move, as the other girl was also injected and collapsed beside me. I vaguely heard his voice and saw his footsteps. "You think you're the only one who can control this ship?" There were 31 people left. I didn't know how much time had passed when I woke up. The room was pitch black, and the ship was violently rocking. The crystal chandelier above swayed as I looked out the window at the towering waves. A storm had come. My mind was clear, but I couldn't stand. I could only crawl on the floor. All the bodies were gone. It was just me and the girl. Smelly and my laptop were taken. I struggled to move towards the girl who was lying awake. "You're awake," I said. She didn't respond, her eyes as empty as before, as if her soul had been drained by the devil. "My name is Lily. Have you tried escaping through the window? They won't open. None of the windows will open." "What about the ducts?" "They're sealed," she said, her voice lifeless. My heart sank. They had blocked all our escape routes. Then the chandelier above made a cracking sound. 3 of its chains snapped, and it was about to fall. We couldn't move our bodies. "We need to get under the bed," I told Lily. My legs felt paralyzed. Only my upper body could move. "Hurry!" I urged her. "I can't move," she said, tears in her eyes. I grabbed her right hand, trying to pull her towards me, but the anesthesia had left me weak. I could only move her inch by inch. Another chain snapped. "Go, leave me," Lily pleaded, but I ignored her, gritting my teeth and pulling her with all my strength. The chandelier swayed above like an executioner. Just as the last chain was about to break, I pulled her to my side. The chandelier crashed down where she had been lying. Lily looked at me in disbelief, tears of gratitude in her eyes. "Thank you for saving me twice," she said. I held her hand tightly, feeling a bond of camaraderie. At that moment, it was as if a higher power heard my call. "Master," I heard Smelly's voice. There were 28 people left. Smelly had found us through the ducts, prying open the sealed metal plate. My strength returned, and I could climb into the duct. Lily was carried by Smelly. Under his guidance, we escaped the dreadful room. To my surprise, Smelly led us to the greenhouse, where the girl in black was waiting at the duct entrance, seemingly keeping watch for us. "Just worry about yourself. You're always causing trouble for others," Sasha said coldly. "Thank you for your help, Miss Sasha." Smelly wagged his tail happily at her. So her name was Sasha. I felt a warmth in my heart, realizing that beneath her cold exterior was a kind soul. Smelly recounted what had happened while I was unconscious. The man who injected us with the sedative was named David, a professional hacker. He had tried to control Smelly and make him his own, but Smelly had escaped from his grasp before he could even get to his room. Thanks to Smelly's speed and tough exterior, no one could catch him. Sasha had seen Smelly running and recognized him as the robot that had issued the warning in the hallway. Smelly, knowing Sasha knew me, sought her help. Together, they ensured the duct was clear of enemies, with Sasha keeping watch while Smelly pried open the vent. Why did David have sedatives? I asked, puzzled. He controlled and locked the infirmary, taking all the sedatives, tranquilizers, and other drugs. Over the past few days, he mixed sedatives into the food, killing people while they were unconscious or injecting them with lethal doses of adrenaline, Sasha explained. What was his relationship with the eagle-tattooed man? I asked. He was originally the eagle-tattooed man's strategist. Because he could control the system, the eagle-tattooed man used him and didn't dare kill him. But David managed to use him to kill others, Sasha said. So that's why I couldn't access the infirmary system. It was locked by him. That means he could see all our actions through the surveillance cameras, I said, feeling a chill down my spine. Don't worry, there are no cameras here. This is a robot work area, Sasha reassured me. Due to the sedative, I felt drowsy. Sasha returned the bread she had taken from me, saying it was too hard to eat. I knew she wanted me to eat something. Under their protection, I finally had a good night's sleep for the first time in days. Before I fell asleep, I thought about going to the game room to regain control of the ship. There were 25 people left. The storm had passed, and today was calm and sunny. Sasha decided to join us. I hoped she wasn't just using me. Lily, however, chose to leave, saying she had caused us enough trouble and could handle things on her own. We couldn't persuade her otherwise, so we let her go. As she left, she hugged each of us. We all knew this might be a final farewell. Since the hallways were full of surveillance cameras, we would be completely exposed. So, we decided to use the ducts to get to the game room. Fortunately, the game room was close to the greenhouse. We quickly reached the game room. Smelly crawled along the ceiling, turning off all the cameras. But our time was limited. Once David noticed the cameras were off, he would know we were there. I underestimated him. He had anticipated our move. The computer wouldn't turn on. The power to the game room had been cut. Just as I was at a loss, I saw a red figure fall outside the window. A girl had fallen into the sea. My mind went blank. Could it be her? When Smelly pulled up the surveillance footage, my heart sank. It was Lily. She had changed into a beautiful red dress and jumped off the deck. She had made up her mind when she said goodbye to us. I suddenly remembered the small package she had given me, telling me to open it the next day. I quickly opened it. Inside was her phone, with a message. Thank you for saving me, but I can't go on. It's not because I feel I've lost my purity, but because I can't escape this shadow, whether on the ship or on land. My heart was heavy, and tears welled up in my eyes. I understood her. Even if we survived the ship, the demons on land would still haunt us. There were 23 people left. Time was running out. We had to turn on the computer before David arrived. There's a backup power source, Smelly said hesitantly. What's the problem? I asked. The backup power source is in a dangerous area with several people hiding there, Smelly explained. Sasha, already with her backpack on, said, if the computer turns on, can you control the ship? I think so, I replied, unsure. Wait, I called out to Sasha as she crawled into the duct. Be careful. Sasha smiled at me for the first time. She was a warrior, I always thought. Sure enough, within 10 minutes, the computer screen lit up. I quickly connected the computer to Smelly. Using injection attack techniques, I cracked the administrator account and password. I successfully logged into the system, but David had set up a strong firewall to prevent others from controlling the ship. I kept trying and finally found a vulnerability, gaining access. I modified the scripts and variables, and control was about to be transferred to me, including control of the infirmary. Suddenly, Smelly made a strange noise. Master, I think I'm infected with a virus. Smelly's voice became intermittent. I looked at the progress bar on the screen and immediately disconnected the link. Damn it, David said a virus in the program. Can you self-cleanse the virus? I asked Smelly anxiously. Yes, but if I continue to connect, I might be permanently damaged, Smelly replied, his voice still intermittent. Okay, I'll try another way, I said. Just then, Sasha returned safely but brought worse news. The ship was sinking. There were 22 people left. I noticed water seeping through the door, covering the floor. Did we hit a reef? I asked. Impossible. If we hit a reef, there would be an alarm, Smelly said calmly. Sasha, where did you find the leak? I asked. The first room next door, Sasha replied. It could be a valve problem. Someone sabotaged the valve, Smelly analyzed. Besides David, who else could it be? He wants to drown us, Sasha said, crossing her arms. I think he wants to sink the whole ship and escape on a lifeboat, I said. Exactly. Sabotaging the valve serves two purposes. If he doesn't want to sink the ship, he can destroy all the computers. If he does, he can kill us all, Sasha said. We can't let him succeed. We must save the ship, I said, trying new ways to crack David's virus. Suddenly, the game room door opened and water flooded in. What's happening? I asked. The door was remotely controlled, Smelly said. What do we do? I faced a pile of code, feeling helpless. The water was already up to our ankles. If the water reaches the power source, we'll be electrocuted, Sasha said, trying to close the door. In the crisis, my mind went blank. I was on the verge of tears. Smelly placed his metal hand on mine. Master, let me try, he said. No, you'll die, I cried. If we don't do something, we'll all die, Smelly said, his screen showing a smiling face. Tears streamed down my face. The water was up to my calves. I knew I had no choice. Sasha and I stood on the table. Smelly connected himself to the computer. Master, to prevent my system from being maliciously altered, I will shut down my system at the last moment, Smelly said. I couldn't respond, just stared at his smiling face on the screen, watching the progress bar move forward. The water level rose. Sasha lifted the computer and monitor. I held Smelly. The progress bar reached 90%. Smelly's voice became harder to understand. I felt his heartbeat weaken. 91%, 92%, 93%. Master, goodbye! Smelly's tail twitched one last time. Good night, Smelly, I whispered. Smelly's screen went dark. The progress bar reached 100%. Overwhelmed with grief, I cried uncontrollably. Sasha, with tears in her eyes, gently patted my back, reminding me not to waste Smelly's sacrifice. I took control of the ship, activated the drainage system, and closed the valve. The ship slowly stabilized. I felt utterly exhausted. Who had put us in this game, and why did they want us to kill each other? There were 13 people left. When the game started, the eagle-tattooed man, with his strength and leadership, gathered a group of followers. They believed in solving external conflicts before internal ones, leading to a rapid increase in deaths. David hid behind the eagle-tattooed man, acting as his strategist. Even now, the eagle-tattooed man's followers didn't know he was dead. It was time for a show. I broadcasted a message. David poisoned his brother's food. The message played on all the ship's screens. His followers would take care of him for us. I found a rental laptop in the game room, becoming the ship's master again. With control of the infirmary, Sasha and I decided to find weapons there. I completely hacked David's system, preventing him from controlling or monitoring us. As I prepared to put Smelly in my backpack, a small drawer popped out. Inside was a handgun. Thank you, Smelly, I whispered, hiding the gun from Sasha. I still didn't fully trust her. We gathered surgical tools, bandages, and medicine from the infirmary. The sedatives and tranquilizers were gone. There were 12 people left. We set out for a new hiding place, but heard unfamiliar footsteps. We stopped, and so did the footsteps. Is someone following us? I whispered to Sasha. She gripped her knife, but before I could react, a rope tightened around her neck. She tried to stab the man, but he knocked the knife from her hand. I grabbed a scalpel and aimed for his throat, but he kicked me, slamming my head into the wall. Sasha was nearly suffocating, her face pale and eyes bloodshot. I lunged at the man again, but he dodged, determined to kill Sasha. I had no choice. I drew the handgun and shot him in the head. He fell, blood splattering the wall. Sasha, shocked, knelt and coughed. Why do you have a gun? Her eyes asked. No time to explain, I said, pulling her along. The gunshot would attract others. We ran to our hiding place. My heart pounded from killing someone. Watch out, Sasha shouted, but it was too late. I tripped a wire and we fell into a water tank. There were 9 people left. With the valve closed and the drainage system activated, the tank shouldn't be flooded. Someone had sabotaged the drainage system and set the trap. It had to be David. We surfaced, finding a small pocket of air. Sasha laughed bitterly. I'm sorry, she said. It's not your fault, I replied. You saved my life. She looked at me with sincerity. Suddenly, I saw red liquid around her. You're hurt, I exclaimed. Why didn't you tell me? Now you know, she said. The man had cut her abdomen. I wrapped my jacket around her wound. Thank you, but I might not make it, she said, her eyes sad. I hugged her. We'll get out of here, I said. We need to take a deep breath. The emergency drain is in the next room. We adjusted our breathing and dove. I held Sasha's hand, swimming to the door. The water pressure was crushing. We reached the hallway, finding the next room's window open. We swam in, seeing the emergency drain. But Sasha's hand slipped from mine. She had passed out. I was also losing consciousness. I used my last strength to open the valve. Oxygen filled my lungs. I pulled Sasha into the drain and closed the valve. There were 3 people left. After giving Sasha CPR, she woke up. I treated her wound with the sealed medicine, but her injury was deep. Without proper treatment, she could die. We climbed the emergency drain, leaving the flooded tank. Seeing the screen, I was shocked. Only 3 people were left. Besides Sasha and me, there was one other person. It had to be David. We need to get to the infirmary, I said urgently. Sasha's wound was bleeding through the bandage. Let's find him, she said. No, you need to stop the bleeding, I insisted. I know I'm dying, she said, tears filling my eyes. I couldn't lose her after losing Smelly. I regretted not trusting her sooner. If I had used the gun earlier, she wouldn't be hurt. She wiped my tears. I know you're a good person, she said. You must survive. I will, I said, determined to get her to the infirmary. I carried her up the ladder. I had never felt so strong. Going to the infirmary was risky. We had to leave the duct and switch to another one. As we walked the hallway, we heard a whistle. It was David. He walked towards us, hands in his pockets, mocking us. I drew the gun, standing in front of Sasha. Come any closer and I'll shoot, I warned. Go ahead, he taunted, whistling. I aimed at his head and pulled the trigger, but nothing happened. He laughed, bending over. The gunpowder was wet. He drew his own gun, pointing it at us. How did he get a gun? I wondered. If they don't give me a gun, I take it from their bodies. David sneered. I resigned myself to fate, but his gun clicked empty. Sorry, no bullets left. I don't need a gun to kill you, he said, drawing a knife and lunging at Sasha. I kicked him in the stomach. Sasha, regaining her warrior spirit, grabbed his head, but he knew her wound, elbowing her abdomen. She clutched her wound, and he pressed the knife to her throat. I slashed his arm, making him scream. He tackled me, his knife over my eye. I held the blade, but he overpowered me. I turned my head, making him stab the floor. Sasha signaled me. It was time for Plan B. She kicked me into the nursery, locking the door. I was stunned. She pulled the fire alarm, releasing sulfuric acid instead of water. We had mixed it into the fire system in the infirmary. I pounded the door, unable to believe she sacrificed herself. I watched as the acid burned them. Sasha smiled at me one last time before closing her eyes. I screamed, tears blurring my vision. I felt powerless, watching my friends die. Sasha, the brave girl in black, was gone forever. Her sacrifice revealed our deep bond. I had never loved anyone like this. Through my tears, I saw a white rose fall from Sasha's bag, slowly dissolving in the acid. I fainted from grief. There was one person left. I woke up in my room, the sea and sky outside. The ship was sailing. Was it all a nightmare? I dressed and opened the door. The hallway was clean, no bodies. The public areas were tidy, robots playing cheerful music. But there were no people. A robot approached, saying the captain wanted to talk. In the presidential suite, the captain appeared as a hologram, wearing a hat, black robe, and boots, looking down at me. Congratulations on being the last survivor, he said. Why did you make us kill each other? I shouted. Sorry, we used you for a test of human nature. The tragedy could have been avoided, he said. What do you mean? I asked. You could have united and found a way to break the game, but you chose violence, he said. He was right. We had a choice. Is it right to exploit human nature for violence? I asked. You'll reach your destination in 2 days. Enjoy your time on the ship, he said, ignoring my question. I left, feeling no joy in surviving. My world was destroyed on the ship. I bought a grave for Sasha, visiting with white roses. Their scent made me feel she was with me. I didn't care if the ship invited new guests for another game. Maybe I would spend my life proving if human nature was self-destructive. The end. Thank you for listening.